The past is not dead, it merely sleeps, and sometimes it whispers to those willing to listen. Each of us is a mosaic of stories that unfolded long before we were born, on thrones, in fields, on battlefields, and in the quiet of ordinary homes. I will tell you these stories, not to mourn, but to understand, because only those who know the past can truly grasp the present. Welcome to Echoes of the Past.
My name is Leonardo. I was born on April 15th, 1452, in Vinci, Tuscany. And no, I wasn't nobility. My father was a notary, my mother, a peasant girl. And me? I was a problem for the record keepers, an illegitimate child. No university, no inheritance, no privileges. But instead, freedom. Freedom to run through the hills, watch the clouds, dissect lizards, and ask, why? How? And what if? While other boys dreamed of swords and glory, I drew swirling water currents. My first notebook was a scrap of parchment. My first model, an insect. Maybe I didn't know what I would become, but I already felt I would be everything. When I was 14, my father sent me to Florence. He said, "Leonardo needs discipline." I said, "Leonardo needs a workshop." And I found one. With Master Verrocchio, sculptor, painter, engineer, and most importantly, a very patient man. Because not everyone can handle an apprentice who tells you mid-painting that the angel's wing isn't anatomically correct. In Verrocchio's workshop, I learned everything. Painting, carving, color mixing, bronze casting, marble polishing, mirror grinding, and sometimes sweeping the floors. It was alchemy, a fusion of art and science. And I devoured every shadow, every brushstroke, every movement of every lever. One day, the master let me finish painting an angel in one of his works. I made it so vivid that, as the story goes, Verrocchio put down his brush for good. He figured, if your student has surpassed you, why go on? I don't know if that story is true, but it's a good one, isn't it? Florence opened my eyes. The city felt like a living brain. Everywhere, art, architecture, debate, books. And me? I wanted to understand it all. I painted flowers, dissected corpses, designed bridges, studied the flow of water. My notebooks were filled with drawings, equations, thoughts, and I wrote them all in mirror script. Why? So no one would steal them. Or maybe I was just a lefty with a flair for drama. They called me a painter, but I never saw the difference between a brush and a bolt. Everything was structure. The human body, a bridge, a bird, a face. I painted to understand, and I sketched when I finally did. People looked at my notebooks and shook their heads. Flying machines, tanks, diving suits. "That'll never work," they said. Maybe not then, but I believed one day they would. I studied everything, how water moves, how light bends, how wind spirals into a vortex. I dissected the dead, not out of morbid fascination, but because I wanted to understand human beauty, and to do that, you must know every muscle beneath it. I wrote everything down, with a hand that never rested. I drew nerve paths, embryos, the sadness in a face. And the more I knew, the more I realized how little we all do. I dreamed of flying, that one day we would rise into the skies like birds. So I drew wings, screws, flaps, airships. I even tried them myself. Thankfully, no one was there with a camera. Yes, I was slow. Some paintings I never finished, not because I was lazy, but because every time something new would call me away. The world was too fascinating to ignore. Florence shaped me. But then came Milan, a city of steel, power, and opportunity. I wrote a letter to Duke Ludovico Sforza, offered my services, not as a painter, not as a sculptor, but as a military engineer. I promised weapons, fortresses, bridges, catapults, even underwater assaults, and at the very end of the letter I casually added, "Also, I paint." So I went to Milan, and once again, I became a student. I made sculptures, designed theater sets, even planned a colossal bronze horse, the largest the world had ever seen. It was supposed to be legendary. Was. Then war came, and they melted the bronze into cannons. Me? I carried on. I never chased fame. I chased perfection. Years later, I returned to Florence. Older, wiser, and even more restless. I painted battles, drew plans for cities, researched flight. And then the winds took me north again. One day they said, "Leonardo, you're a painter, so paint." So I painted, but in my own way. I wasn't interested in decorating walls. I wanted paintings to breathe, to speak without a word. Mona Lisa, yes, her. But believe me, even I'm not sure who she really was. She sat there smiling, and I painted, for years, literally. People asked, "Why doesn't she have eyebrows?" And I'd say, "Because mystery is part of beauty." Everything about her was calculation, light, shadow, that expression that never leaves. Then came another challenge, the Last Supper. A massive wall in a Milanese monastery. The monks wanted Jesus and his disciples. I wanted the moment of betrayal, that exact second when Jesus says, "One of you will betray me." And then, stillness. Each man reacts differently. Peter leans in, John folds, Judas goes pale. It wasn't about faces, it was about tension, movement, the silence in the truth. Sadly, the technique I used didn't last. The wall began to mold before my brush even dried. But you know what? Even as the colors faded, the idea remained. Sometimes what a painting makes you feel is more important than how long it survives. Eventually, I left Italy. I had enough of wars, envy, unfinished commissions. Then came an invitation. King Francis I of France. He wanted me at his court, not just as a painter, but as a thinker. So I said yes. I crossed the Alps, northward, to a land of wine and wonder. They gave me a home, a lovely manor called Clos Lucé, just steps from the royal chateau in Amboise. I brought with me everything I loved, my drawings, notebooks, and Mona Lisa. The king visited often, asked me about the world, about death, about flying. Sometimes we spoke, sometimes we dreamed in silence. He said he saw me as a father, and I saw him as the son I never had. I painted less. My hand was tired. But my mind, it kept spinning. I pondered the geometry of the soul, the symmetry of the universe, and what might come after me. And then, one spring day, I closed my eyes. They say I died in the king's arms. A nice story. Maybe true. Maybe just another legend. But you know what? If you die having spent your life searching for something, never losing your curiosity, then you didn't die in vain. My life? It wasn't perfect. I left many things unfinished, but maybe that's where its beauty lies. I didn't live for final answers. I lived for the questions. Why does a bird fly? Why does water move? What is beauty, if not balance and chaos at once? They called me a genius, but I was simply curious. Curiosity is only the beginning. What matters most is taking that first step and saying, I'll try, even if I don't know how it ends. Because that's when real creation begins. You may not change the world, but maybe you'll leave a mark. One idea, one sketch, one question. And someday, hundreds of years from now, someone might say, This was made by someone who wasn't afraid to begin. My name is Leonardo da Vinci, and this was my story.
Thank you for joining us on this journey through time. If history speaks to you, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Until next time, let the echoes of the past guide your thoughts.